Salutations and welcome, horse racing fans. My name is Matthew DeSantis, and this is a very special Preakness Spotlight Stakes preview as we are going to be diving deep on the Kentucky Derby winner, Mage, and his chances to win the second leg of the Triple Crown. But before we get to that, make sure to press that subscribe button here on Trust the Profits on YouTube to get all of our great content. We have all these Spotlight Series videos, but listen, we're not just focused on the Preakness. We got graded stakes previews. We have full field rundowns. We have doubling down with Colin Sheehan. I'm doing Captain the Card for this weekend at Belmont. Listen, we have a lot of different content here for you. We're even doing international stakes previews as we have the Victoria Mile over in Japan and the return of Sadashi. We got a lot of content for you here, folks. Live betting on Thursday nights. Make sure to press that subscribe button. Make sure to throw me a follow on Twitter at the handle @FailedToMenace. And make sure to like this video and comment below with what you think Mage's chances are to win the second leg of this year's Triple Crown. Well, like I said, we're going through all of the contenders and all of the field here to spotlight all the runners in the 148th running of the Preakness Stakes. And so we'll start with Mage, obviously the winner of the Grade 1 Kentucky Derby last time out just a few days ago. And that was obviously a thrilling performance for a horse that is young, ascending, and relatively lightly raced. Now he's going to go into the grueling Triple Crown run, three races, 5 weeks, 2 weeks between the Derby and the Preakness, 3 weeks between the Preakness and the Belmont. A lot to ask of a young horse, but certainly one that seems to have very fresh legs and is very capable. So let's talk a little bit more about Mage and this particular field. So when we're talking about the Preakness Field, this is the probable field right now as we record about 10 days before the race. And obviously you see here Mage at the top of the list, but you see other Kentucky Derby runners such as Confidence Game coming back, as well as Disarm coming back. You don't see a horse like Two Phils, who finished second. Larry Ravelli has said he is taking a break. You don't see a horse like Angel of Empire, who finished third, also taking a break. Disarm, who finished fourth, is possibly going to get entered. Steve Asmussen has said either Disarm or Red Route 1, possibly both, but it does seem a little bit more like Red Route 1 is the likely Preakness candidate for that Asmussen barn. But listen, Mage has a really intriguing running style for this race. It's going to be a smaller field. He still does have trouble breaking from the starting gate, but with fewer horses to contend with, it should be a little bit of an easier route for him to get there to the front, unlike having to deal with 19 other horses in the Kentucky Derby. Probably only have to deal with 8 or 9 other horses here in the Preakness Stakes. Just makes that a little bit more navigable for Javier Castellano on the Gustave Delgado horse. But obviously want to dive a little bit more into Mage's profile. And listen, that good magic pedigree is something that is worth noting, as there are 3 likely good magic runners in this race. So that is a very hot sire right now. Last year, we were always talking about gun runner. And listen, there are still a lot of gun runners. There's still probably 2 gun runners in this Preakness field as well. But Good Magic really has emerged as, I think, a really, really, really useful sire, and one obviously with that Curlin pedigree is going to be able to get the champion distance. So very, very impressive there. You got Puka underneath. A lot's been written about Puka. Very nice horse who won several stakes races, one on the turf, actually, one going long. And so has, I think, a very nice underneath profile as well. And the other nice part is Mage actually has a half sibling, half sister, Gunning. Gunning is actually a stakes placed sprint horse that's a year older than Mage, and actually just finished second in a $150,000 stakes race a week before the Kentucky Derby, and has run against horses like Echo Zulu before and run pretty well. So listen, that's a very precocious dam underneath in terms of Puka being from a Big Brown dam. But listen, this is a really intriguing pedigree there. Delgado, obviously making sure everything's all right with Mage coming out of the Kentucky Derby. And you have Castellano, who I think just gave an absolutely picture-perfect ride on the horse. Well, listen, we already know a little bit about Mage's past performances because we spotlighted him leading up to the Kentucky Derby, but it is interesting to see the continued progression from an Equibase speed figure standpoint. So from Equibase, he went 88, 95, 102, 104. It was not the sort of massive leap from the Florida Derby to the Kentucky Derby that you might have expected. I think that actually plays well for Mage, because I think if you look at different speed figures, that Kentucky Derby performance might appear to be a massive leap from the Florida Derby performance. As a result, you might think, well, Mage is going to bounce off of that last effort. Now you look at these equibase speed figures and you go, well, maybe this is just who the horse is. If he can keep turning in those types of efforts, roughly that type of speed figure, there's maybe not a reason to expect for this horse to bounce. As I've mentioned before, very lightly raced. It has fresh legs still. Very young horse in a lot of ways from a racing standpoint. But one of the things Delgado has been doing is giving this horse 6 furlong workouts leading up to the race. I think that's something that's very notable, in that he's giving this horse foundation underneath, giving this horse a lot of conditioning. Even though it's a young horse, he's working out this horse very aggressively, shows you that this horse really does have very fresh legs. I think you don't see trainers give 6 furlong workouts very often, especially if they don't think that this horse has a lot to give. I mean, honestly, someone like Bob Baffert is about the only other trainer out there that really regularly gives 6 furlong workouts. And yet Mage's, I want to say, leading up to the Kentucky Derby, 3 of his last 4 workouts were all 6 furlongs. So, and the other one that wasn't was a 5 furlong. So he's a horse that's getting a lot of conditioning leading up to these races, making up for maybe some of the lost time and not having that back class, that large foundation as a 2-year-old underneath. But like I said, I think in this crop, I said it months ago, I think it was set up for a lightly raced horse like Mage to run well in the Kentucky Derby. So indeed he did. Now it's a matter of, can he come back from that? Now, I think one of the concerns that we have with Mage, looking at this past performance, and one of the things you don't really see in this graphic is the running lines that you see in the PPs. That maiden special weight race is looking more and more like an anomaly. And what I mean by that is that maiden special weight, Mage broke well from the gate and wired the field, went gate to wire. And that we thought was going to be who Mage was going into the Fountain of Youth Stakes. We thought he was going to be a very prominently placed horse on the front end. Well, he didn't break particularly well that day. And while he got up, kind of mid pack, he certainly was not the pace presence we thought he would end up being. Same thing happens in the Florida Derby. Does not break particularly sharp and is coming from well in the back to win, to finish second in that race. What happens in the Kentucky Derby? Same song, third verse now. Again, does not break particularly sharp. Castellano does a great job at taking him down on the inside rail, saving a lot of ground, but launches from really a little further back than mid-pack and gets the win. So it's starting to appear as if Mage is just that type of horse, that he's not going to break that great, and he's going to be kind of a middle of the pack type of horse who makes a run late, as opposed to that horse that was going to really wire the field. Now, that said, it's going to be interesting to see if he is a horse that does get out there on the front end in the Preakness Stakes. I bring that up because Pimlico has traditionally been a track that is very souped up on the day of the race. Front end speed holds up very, very well at Pimlico. And we saw that last year with a horse like Early Voting. Front end speed is really where you want to be on a big day. And listen, it's not just Early Voting. You go back and you look at that entire Preakness Day card, even the Black Eyed Susan Day card, front end speed was dominant on all of those races, whether it was routing or sprinting on the dirt. So again, you have to be aware of these types of things. On big days, they tend to soup up the track for front end speed. So does Mage try to get a little bit more aggressive? Does Javier try to get this horse out a little bit faster? Does he use up a little bit more early to get on the front end? So if there is a track bias, he can fight against it. I think those are things to certainly pay attention to and concern yourself with if you're a supporter of Mage in this particular spot. Do I think he can win the second leg of the Triple Crown? Absolutely. I think the field for the Preakness Stakes is solid, but certainly not overwhelming. He has the ability. He's obviously, we know he can get the distance. I love that he is a relatively young horse that is still lightly raced and still, I think, rather fresh coming out of the Kentucky Derby. I don't think it's going to be too much to ask him to continue to step up and run this big race on 2 weeks rest. I think he has the ability to do it for sure. So that's our spotlight preview of Mage leading into the Kentucky Derby, or the Preakness Stakes, I should say. Make sure to subscribe to Trust the Profits to get all of our other Preakness Stakes previews of all of the major contenders and runners in this year's field. Make sure to follow me on Twitter at the handle at Failed to Menace. And make sure to like this video and comment below with what you think Mage's chances are at winning the second leg of the Triple Crown. Until next time, friends, my name is Matthew DeSantis, wishing you a great and prosperous day at the races and reminding you that it's now post time.